Hello, everyone. We've got a good turnout already, so we'll start on time if that's okay. My name's James Wyatt. I'll be taking this webinar along with my colleague Daniel Leigh. Introductions in a moment. Just before we get going, if you could please type any questions you have into the question box that you'll see pop out from the GoToWebinar section on the right-hand side. We will try and answer the questions at the end rather than on the way through the presentation. So welcome to the webinar. This webinar is about maximising performance in transport through using better handling of data and technology. Just some information about our presenters. Myself, James Wyatt. I'm the Channel Sales Manager at Webfleet Solutions. Been here for 11 years. When I joined, we had less than 10% of our customer base that we have now, and it was a very different business. I have with me Daniel Leigh, who's worked in our channel sales teams and is now a senior account manager, also working with some of our direct large accounts. Previously, he had a history of working for BMW corporate sales. So what we'll be talking about today is some of the challenges facing transport businesses as a whole, and then what we've condensed into what we call 4 pillars of transport success. And when I say success, I'm looking at it from a data handling and technology adoption perspective. There'll be many other areas that you guys know far more about than we do. So we're looking there at proving compliance, boosting productivity, reducing fuel costs and other costs, and then a section which has had a lot more interest just recently, which is keeping your drivers safe and assets secure. We will cover the effects of the current crisis on the platforms that we're talking about all the way through the presentation, but I'll summarize in that section some particular points for trying to reduce person-to-person contact, the risk of infection, and trying to be able to run your systems more from home rather than needing people to be in the office. Then lastly, we'll have a quick look at a customer example and a short video clip from one of our customers. So when we look at data around challenges facing transportation, obviously it depends slightly on who you ask and different studies, and cutting costs is always up there as one of the key ones. But you see a great deal around business process improvement, required improvements to customer service, visibility of the supply chain. A significant number of those factors on there are very technology related. And transport as a whole is a business which has a lot of very manual processes. There's a lot that you can't change. You can't stop loading and unloading physically things onto a vehicle. But the requirement to suddenly modernize has been dramatically changed in recent years by the likes of Uber and eBay and Amazon. All of a sudden, end users are very aware that there are service levels out there. Possibility exists to see the vehicle, see when their order's coming in. So if we look at our own studies and our own documentation into how and why people buy our telematics platforms, actually increasing customer service levels is the most important factor for companies investing in telematics. And I'll try and keep most of this as product agnostic as possible. It's not a sales pitch around our particular products. So as the BBC say, other telematics platforms are available. I'll keep it fairly generic. But this is interesting data. We're the largest telematics platform in Europe with around twice the number of subscriptions of our next biggest competitor. And if 26% of our customers are mainly saying that customer service levels are why they've invested, that's a big indicator that they're looking to get that technology awareness and looking to be able to show customers where the vehicles are, where the deliveries are, and do everything remotely. And that's quite a dramatic change in the 11 years I've been here. Initially, it was all about cost savings, and that's really been a big change in recent years. So there's obviously a lot to talk about and lots of different areas there, but we've condensed it for simplicity into 4 pillars of transport success. And they are, first of all, compliance. Secondly, productivity. Thirdly, cost. And fourthly, safety and security. And that section at the moment obviously has huge emphasis because of the current COVID crisis. So when it comes to compliance, there's many different areas that transport companies need to think about here. And the first thing I would say is that transport companies are very strong in this area, particularly those that operate heavy vehicles, have a good handle on compliance and a good handle on safety. However, they do tend to do it in a very manual way. Now, we see businesses with fleets of all different types and different types of vehicle. And as a group, you are very strong in this field. However, a lot of companies are still relying on very manual processes. Now, previously, that was seen as a potential inefficiency. Right now, it's also a direct risk. Now, if you have people carrying around bits of paper, driving around, physically going into another driver's cab to download tachograph data, for example, then that's a real particular danger in the current climate. So telematics can help with the tachograph side of things in a number of ways. First of all, you've got instant access to all the data. So you can see from the telematics platform what hours people are driving, how many hours they've done today, have they taken their breaks, have they taken enough time at the start of the day to do their walk round checks, and all of that side of things as well. And the key thing here is really the ability to download data and view the processed data remotely. So whether your staff are working from home, whether they're in the office, they can see the information, they can download tachograph files, and they can process the information without physically needing to move around and actually stick a card in the tachograph head and download the information. There are a couple of ways of doing this. So, and again, there are other products available that do this from the tachograph manufacturers, from telematics companies like ourselves. But there's two main approaches to this. One is to download the tachograph data remotely from the vehicle with the telematics hardware, but you still actually maintain your existing tachograph analysis tool. You may have a great relationship with your tachograph analysis company. You may be very familiar with their interface. So you can simply use a telematics platform to download the tachograph data wherever the vehicle is, and then automatically upload it, or manually, but when I say manual, I mean clicking a button rather than physically moving it around, upload that data into your tachograph analysis tool. You can also, with some telematics platforms, including Webfleet, go a step further and do the full download, storage, and analysis of that data within one platform. But this is all about simplicity. For an end user, for your staff, they may be working from home now that they weren't before. If they can do as much as possible from one platform rather than have to log into half a dozen different ones, that's got an obvious benefit normally, let alone in the current crisis.
Thank you, James. So the second pillar is about boosting productivity. According to a recent Webfleet Solutions study, the #1 motivating factor for businesses investing in new disruptive technology is to increase productivity. In particular, technology can help to simplify and automate management and administration tasks and free up a business's workforce to concentrate on their own core work. Take, for example, as James has just mentioned, the analysis of tachograph data. This is a crucial task for any transport operator that wishes to maintain a high level of efficiency. There's also a time-consuming one. 32% of all European transport companies dedicate 16 to 30 minutes per vehicle on analysing tachograph data, whilst another 28% spend 31 to 60 minutes on it per month. It's clear too that transport companies are increasingly looking to digitization as a means of countering the distracting nature of some crucial checks and administration. For example, 51% of European transport companies now monitor vehicle checks and maintenance using an application, whilst the traditional paper-based method is now favoured by only 36%. While these are just two examples across your fleet management operation, you'll find countless tasks that could be simplified by investing in new technology. As Rob O'Byrne, the founder of the Logistics Bureau, puts it, if you're still using a paper-based method for route planning or managing with rudimentary software, you're leaving money on the table. In terms of other productivity tools, a connected digital telematics solution can also help manage your driver's time, eliminating scenarios where, for example, a job comes in on a Friday afternoon and you have to make several calls to your drivers to find out whether or not they have enough hours left on their tacho card. You can see at a glance whether you have any drivers with the capacity to complete that job. It also helps with the dispatch and management of jobs so that when a customer calls to find out where a driver is and how long they will be, you can see at a glance when they're likely to arrive at the customer's site, without having to make an unnecessary and distracting call to the driver or make an educated guess. You also have all of the key metrics and data of your fleet available to you within a few clicks of a button, enabling the business to make smarter decisions, both short and long term, for the smooth running of their business. All of this is particularly useful in today's context of social distancing. Many of our productivity tools have the added benefit of reducing paper and face-to-face interaction. With these sorts of solutions, drivers will not have to make a trip to the office to collect paper order schedules or complete paper timesheets. You'll not have to manually download their tachos by physically going into the vehicle or them having to go onto site. They'll not have to ask customers to sign pieces of paper. And this reduction in paper also means that fleet administrators and those planning the work will be able to do all of this from home without having to set foot in the office. In addition, for these customers who run their own business, the days of spending evenings and weekends manually planning jobs and routes on Google Maps are over. With a few clicks of a button, this can all be done automatically. Looking more specifically at route planning and order optimization, depending on the level of complexity required, we can offer this functionality both through our own web fleet platform and through third-party planning and scheduling partners such as OBS, Logistics and Paragon. Within our own platform, we offer the ability to plan complex routes with multiple stops, which will give an accurate journey time based on the current traffic and the vehicle type, taking into account speed limits and width and height restrictions for HGVs. There's also an additional function whereby our system can automatically shuffle those jobs around to give the most optimized route, meaning that you don't end up with drivers going out of their way to complete stops in order when a smarter, more time-efficient route is possible. Our third pillar is on reducing fuel costs. Given that the transport sector relies on oil for 94% of its fuel, it's not surprising to see that oil costs are a constant source of frustration within the industry. In some PricewaterhouseCoopers research, 75% of transport CEOs cited price swings in the cost of oil as one of their biggest operational concerns. Whilst fuel is cheap at the moment, that won't remain the case forever, and it can be incredibly difficult to plan without being able to control fuel spend. There's also the green issue, with the European Union seeking to reduce harmful emissions by around 66% by 2050. There's continuous pressure upon the sector to control its carbon footprint. So how are the transport companies tackling this issue? While fuel cards are still relied upon by most transport companies, a fairly sizable number combine fuel cards with telematics to maintain fuel efficiency. There are a number of ways in which telematics can help to manage fuel usage. By monitoring driver behaviour and offering coaching, fleets are able to dramatically increase their miles per gallon and reduce fuel wastage as a result of poor driving style or excessive idling. By using reliable and optimised truck navigation routes, which take into account current traffic and the size restrictions of the vehicle, drivers will find themselves taking smarter routes, which will ultimately result in less wasted fuel and the added benefit of reaching their customers quicker. This in turn means that the driver may be able to complete more jobs or orders before having to return to base, again reducing the amount of fuel that is wasted and increasing the profitability of the fleet operation. So yeah, in terms of the benefits of FMS reporting, as we said, there's lower total cost of ownership. So by reducing running costs and detecting theft by monitoring fuel levels and identifying abnormal fuel loss, can also improve fuel efficiency, as we've said, with better vehicle and driving insight into fuel consumption, cruise control usage and idling. Can also avoid penalties with real-time alerts when AdBlue levels are low. You can also have more control over your fleet and driver performance. You can improve driver training with driver behavior feedback on idling and cruise control usage. You can also get accurate trip distance reporting from actual odometers, avoid misuse and receive proof that a job was completed correctly with visibility of PTO activation. You can also create a less stressful operation by scheduling your service efficiently based on engine hours rather than distance. Ensure vehicle-specific service schedules are maintained with automated notifications, and also generate invoices based on engine hours usage easily as well. Lastly, accurate FMS reporting also gives you the ability to demonstrate to business owners and to customers what the cost per job is, something that's often incredibly difficult to measure. And this enables smart decision making about whether a particular contract or job remains profitable or not.
Thank you, Daniel. We're moving back to the safe and secure message for the next section. Now, this was already one of the 4 pillars we'd identified pre the current crisis, but this has become far, far more important with the situation we've had in the last few months. And of course, this is not going away in a hurry. Now, we're starting to lift some restrictions now, but we will be with the current virus for months or years to come. Now, what we're trying to do here is reduce physical interaction between people and unnecessary journeys. The fewer people visit your office, the better, and the less times you're actually physically handing anything from one person to another, the better. These are all processes which we would have said were more efficient before the crisis, but it's just given it an additional emphasis. So, different ways that telematics can improve safety and security, and I'll summarize it on the next slide. But first of all, locating your assets and your vehicles. Now, we have an asset tracking solution which will be subject to its own webinar later in this series of webinars that we're holding. So look for our information about that. But that enables you to both locate your assets and know whether they're being moved or used when you don't want them to. It also allows you to cost that based on the hours of use of the assets. But for things like trailers, from a transport perspective, knowing where they are, knowing whether they're moving, knowing what they're with, what's with them in terms of which tractor unit is with which trailer is hugely important. Compliance, we've mentioned, there's a huge number of different ways that compliance is important within the industry, from the tachograph side to all of the vehicle check requirements, and I'll mention that shortly. And also accidents. Not only can we reduce the chance of accidents, and accidents have a huge cost to the business, but accidents create a huge amount of paperwork. So I'm going to touch on information around camera footage being displayed in the telematics platform to try and prove to your insurance company very early that an accident wasn't your driver's fault and reduce the need for vast amounts of paperwork to be sent in. So some of the ways we talked about tachograph download as one of the sort of technology methods of reducing interaction. But that reduces interaction in all sorts of different ways, not driving around, downloading the data, and then not having to shuffle bits of paper around back in the office as well. Everything there can be done digitally. One thing that all vehicles in a commercial sector, but particularly heavy vehicles, have to be doing daily is vehicle checks. Daniel mentioned it on the productivity side, but if you're still doing vehicle checks by paper, then I would seriously think about the numerous solutions out there, which are often very low cost, that can run on smartphones and tablets that the drivers may already have in their possession and do things digitally. You don't need to be collecting paper for vehicle checks, but they do need to occur. And it's much easier to prove with a digital solution that a check's taken place if you get stopped in the future and they want to see the checks relating to that item on that vehicle, then you can prove it much more easily. And again, you could do so with your staff working from home with a digital solution. Now, Webfleet plugins, what I mean by a plugin is the ability to show third-party data within the Webfleet platform, so within a telematics platform, without needing to go into a separate platform for that information. I've got 3 examples of that, which I'll cover in the next slides. And then lastly, you've got order optimization. We have a large number of third-party software companies that can do full job and order optimization. And there's a basic order optimization within Webfleet itself. So if you actually know what jobs you want to do and input them into Webfleet, we can show you the most accurate and least time consuming way of doing those jobs. That is often a hugely time consuming job for a lot of transport companies I've visited, where people, often very senior people, are working until very late at night every day trying to plan the next day's work. So first plug-in then, and there's some footage from my own car actually when we were driving to a meeting before. Someone decided to do a 3-point turn on a fairly busy road. So the insurance industry talks a lot about first notification of loss. If you can get data to your insurance company showing what's happened, then that makes a huge difference to them and how an accident's handled. If you can get video footage to the insurance company straight away, then they can take that to the other insurance company, and it can potentially stop the whole process of you having to fill in loads of bits of paper and then contesting it with the other party. So what we have is the ability to connect various manufacturers' products to Webfleet with what we call a plugin, which is this pop out from the left-hand side there with the vehicle details. And then from one click within Webfleet, you can view all the event videos when there's been an incident and actually see 30 seconds of footage and download it if you want to and send it straight to your insurance company. There is a full detailed F&O platform available with all camera manufacturers' products, but potentially you don't need to access that at all. If your staff are working from home, they may not be familiar with the F&O platform from your camera supplier. This is a really useful way of just getting that data at one click, downloading a video clip, and then sending it to your insurance company for proof. Another plugin we have is TPMS. Now, TPMS probably undersells this as a solution. This is the tire watch information we have here, and there will be further TPMS platforms available within Webfleet over time. But what we're talking about here is remotely reporting tire pressure information. But far more than that, we're talking about using artificial intelligence to then plan what that means for that vehicle. Now, a significant number, I think 87% of HGV breakdowns in the UK are tyre problems. 40% of HGV accidents in the UK were caused by tyre pressure loss and tyre damage. So this is a massive issue for people running heavy vehicles. Most tyre loss and tyre pressure problems with heavy vehicles are a slow puncture that over a period of time will reduce and reduce and reduce. It then overheats and explodes. So most of the time, if you knew in advance that that pressure loss was happening, you could stop the vehicle and replace that tyre. This will even give you the information as to how long it will take before that tyre goes critical. So that vehicle may be on a 3-hour journey, but it may be stopping off some goods 1 hour from now. And actually the tyre pressure information may come back and say, well, actually, you've got 2 hours before this is critical. So you could go to your next stop, you could offload some product, and then you could wait there for a pre-arranged meeting with the tyre company to come out and change the tyre or repair the tyre on that vehicle. And obviously repairing tyres rather than replacing them has an additional significant cost benefit. Then the third plugin we have is our asset tracking plugin, which shows you asset information. In this instance, for the transport industry, we'll mainly talk about trailers, but it shows you asset information on the same screen as your tractor units and other vehicles. We've also just launched a coupling feature, so you can actually see which asset is attached to which tractor unit when it's being moved. And then when the asset's parked up, the battery on the asset tracker will maintain a couple of months worth of supply, and it will only track if that vehicle moves. There's tilt sensors, there's the ability to geofence. So from a security perspective, you know whether your products are actually being moved or your assets are being moved. From utilization and a productivity perspective, you may actually find you need fewer trailers if you know where they all are. And we've had companies who've taken these asset tracking devices in who've actually been able to sell a percentage of their trailers because they don't need them anymore. I've seen many transport companies with hundreds of trailers who freely admit they don't know where a significant number of their trailers are at any stage, and they actually employ people to walk around looking for them sometimes in the yards and work out where they are. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could see where all your assets were and if you knew that they were safe and secure? Now, one of the key benefits of Webfleet and the whole way we work is our integration with third parties. The solution wouldn't be what it was without numerous third-party software companies that connect into our product. And around 25% of our customers actually use some kind of API, which is a software-to-software connection with a third party. The API information is all freely available. So if you have developers yourselves or anyone with coding expertise within the business, they can actually download the information and see how to get data in and out of Webfleet. But these are some examples of companies that have actually done work already and have productized interactions with Webfleet. So there's TMS platforms on there like Sterling Solutions. There are numerous scheduling and routing companies like Paragon, PTV Group, Maxoptra. There are complete packages like OBS Logistics. Some of these which I would draw your attention to in terms of saving time and reducing physical interaction between people are things like the Driving Doctor, which is a product which actually allows, effectively, it trains and coaches your drivers on their behavior. So rather than just saying to a driver, this is where you're weak, this is where you're strong, it identifies their characteristics from the data and sends them customized training information. So if you're particularly poor at speeding, even breaking it down further, if you're particularly poor at speeding in low speed limits, it will send you customized information about why that's a problem and then about how to improve, and then keep you personally updated with how your performance is going. But your colleagues may be getting chased about their idling performance or their cornering speeds. It may be different things for different people. So we have a range of different products there which actually make it much easier to run your business with less physical human-to-human interaction, which is what this is all about in the current environment.
Thank you, James. Next we're going to take a look at a customer testimonial from Ellis. They're a long-time customer of Webfleet Solutions. They've implemented a number of our products and solutions that contribute innumerably to the running of their fleet operation.
We provide textile rentals and laundry services. Our drivers make around 5,000 deliveries across the UK every day to restaurants, hotels, hospitals and manufacturers. But coordinating 750 vehicles nationwide is always going to be a challenge. We initially had 3 telematics providers, each business division having their own solution, but there was no central control and no way of reporting ROI to the board. We also had cameras on the vehicles, but getting the footage off the vehicles sometimes took days or even weeks. We wanted to improve both driver safety and fleet sustainability, but just with one integrated solution. Webfleet ticked every box for us as it provides all the functionality we need on one platform. We now have one accurate real-time version of the truth right across the fleet and a complete audit trail for risk management reporting.
Webfleet was built very much with integration in mind. This means our customers can take control of various aspects of fleet management using a single, easy-to-use interface. Peter has also found using the OptiDrive 360 feature very useful. It provides some real-time feedback and driver coaching, highlighting such things as speeding and driving events and giving them a driving performance score.
We use the OptiDrive stats every day to create a risk profile for the drivers, which protects them as well as us. The obvious traffic light coding makes it very easy for us to spot the problem drivers. Each depot is now incentivised to improve their driver scores, and we've seen some dramatic results. Inefficient and unsafe driving has been cut by nearly 58%, and we have virtually eradicated speeding. Combined with other business initiatives, the change in driving style has helped us save fuel, quite a lot of fuel in fact, 1.8 million to be exact, and 2,000 tonnes of carbon emissions. We can now view camera footage directly from Webfleet. This allows us to address the root cause of performance issues with individual drivers. It also gives us irrefutable evidence that can safeguard them in the case of non-fault incidents.
The integrated I Can Prove It cameras provide 360-degree visibility in HD with digital security, providing driver and vehicle safety and security.
Driving events are automatically categorised by level of severity. A crash or any event above 4 sends an automatic email to our logistics manager. She can click through immediately to live view to see what's happening in real time, and we'll get an automated download of historical footage showing camera footage from 2 minutes before the crash and 10 minutes after. We used to pay out on 80% of the accidents, we now only pay out on 20%. It means we've saved £1.2 million in insurance claims mitigation.
As ELIS's claims representatives, we can now access vehicle camera footage within minutes of an accident happening. In this case, the ELIS driver's vehicle is shown to be veering left and right, and it's only when you look at the rear-facing camera that we actually see a third party has clearly crashed into our client's vehicle. Having such irrefutable evidence at our fingertips enables us to make sure that the ELIS claims history and insurance costs are kept in check.
The web fleet system has actually made us feel much safer out on the road now, because we have the cameras. If there's an incident out on the road, we have the footage that backs our claim up. The driver terminal within the cab also reminds us to drive in a safer and greener way.
The cameras are not just used for insurance claims. The rear-mounted cameras are used for health and safety purposes to ensure the vehicles are loaded and unloaded correctly. This feeds into health and safety procedures, as well as to ensure the safety equipment for the vehicle is working correctly. Footage has been used to show past mistakes, to create training videos to help improve safety standards.
I love the fact that we're future-proof with Webfleet as we get free software updates for life. We've cut fuel costs by nearly 10%. It's honestly one of the best investments we've ever made, and the figures speak for themselves. It's a total win-win for us, our drivers, our insurers and the environment.
Thank you, Daniel. One thing I would say about the video is that that was obviously a very large company. We have companies of all different sizes. We have a very significant base of customers with between 2 and 20 vehicles. We're one of the most broadly spread telematics companies in terms of the range of customer types and solutions we have. So the percentage savings tend to be roughly the same. They tend to be very similar. There's some big numbers there, but the percentages, whether you've got 5 vehicles or 500, tend to be pretty similar. Right, that's the end of our presentation. I'd intended to take about half an hour. It's taken exactly half an hour, which is great. You want to take up a full hour slot, particularly at the moment. I know we've all got a lot to be doing from home. Don't know about you, but it's been a lot of video calls and almost more going on than there was in an office environment, which is good. And I do think there'll be lasting changes to the way that companies work from this crisis to, you know, often the positive side. So do we have any questions that have come through?
We don't have any questions.
Okay, no problem.
Unless anybody else has any more that they wanted to quickly fire through.
If you have any questions, put them through now. Otherwise, I would say we're running a whole sequence of webinars, which will all intend to be an educational rather than a straight sort of product pitch and showing product information and pricing. We're trying to do something a little educational, try and help the industry and help our existing customers and prospects. So if you keep your eyes on our website and ourselves on LinkedIn, you'll see information about a whole series of webinars over the coming weeks. And if that's that on the question side.
Sorry, we have just had we've just had a question through from Matthew Hammond. How does your system integrate with third-party camera providers?
Okay, it's a good question. I mean, to do the full plugin that we'd seen there before on the presentation, where you actually have the extra pane in Webfleet, that requires integration work to be done by the camera company. So there are 4, I believe, at the moment who do that. They come from fairly specialist sort of high-end suppliers like I Can Prove It, which was the one that was on that Berenston video, through some, again, fairly specialist like Mantis, which is a product which is aimed very much at the HGV market, and then some more commonly known names like Vision Track as well, which was the plugin that we showed that we use on our own vehicles within our fleet. So it requires work to be done by the camera company to actually write a bit of software to connect into Webfleet. But then what we do is we have a link in Webfleet that simply fires up a page which shows the incidents, nice and simple. So we can talk to additional camera companies about that. There's no limit to that. So if you've got someone in mind that you'd like to talk to us, then we're more than happy to have that conversation with them.
And that was it on the questions.
Okay, excellent. Thanks everyone for your time. It's probably about the right length of time for duration. I wasn't going to take up the full hour slot there. And as I said, please keep your eyes open for the next webinars that are coming up. And thank you very much.